So, a lot of people ask, is there any measurable positive effect of traditional historic architecture on society? I think there actually is. I think there actually is one metric in which there may, in fact, be a correlation between the presence of traditional architecture and the betterment of a society as a whole that is actually measurable. And what is it? Well, unfortunately, it's a topic that apparently YouTube censors videos on if you say the word. So I'm gonna have to use some euphemisms here. I think Thinking Ape uses the euphemism "checking out early." A lot of people. There's the meme "and hero." It's also the squad that Harley Quinn is a part of. It's like a homicide, only it's a homicide against yourself. So that particular action, if you look at the rates of that particular action by country, and there's maps that look it up on Wikipedia, like Google it, using the term like rates by country. They have a map, and sure enough, the countries with traditional architecture tend to be lower. And you can see this within Europe and also just those countries compared to other countries across the globe, like Italy, Spain, Portugal, other countries that have a predominance of traditional architecture have a lower rate of people checking out early, whereas countries where the average building, like if in the average city, tends to be more like commie blocks, like Russia, I think Ukraine, some of the other east, like the ones in Eastern Europe that are more like where the average city is full of commie blocks, and also Japan and I think South Korea, some of the other East Asian countries. Again, like there are traditional buildings in all these countries, but if you look at like the total amount of historic architecture, like a country like Italy or Spain or Portugal on a per capita basis would be way higher than a country like Russia or Japan, where I would say those countries are more dominated by commie blocks, and also in the case of Japan, like glass condominiums and skyscrapers of the more postmodern sort. Russia has a few of those too. Yeah, Moscow and St. Petersburg have plenty of historic architecture, but those aren't the average for Russia as a whole. So, is there a correlation there? Maybe. Um, it's not a definitive causation, but I do think when you look at the data, there's a correlation, and I think it makes sense. Like people, they're less depressed, they're happier, and they have more meaning in their life if they're in a place that looks beautiful. If they're in a place that fills them with a sense of pride in what their ancestors built, rather than like some dystopian looking place full of commie blocks. Now, what's interesting is if you look at the more suburbanized societies like Canada, US, Australia, and New Zealand, their rates of people checking out early are higher than in countries like Italy and Spain and France, but lower than in countries like Japan and Russia. So to me, that suggests that like suburbanization, it's more depressing than living around traditional architecture, but less depressing than living around endless commie blocks, which actually makes sense to me. Like, I think suburbia is fairly depressing in a lot of ways, but I think commie blocks are in some ways more depressing. Suburbia is worse for the environment, but commie blocks might be the most objectively depressing type of architecture. And I think also endless glass modernist, like postmodernist glass shit, I think is like hardly less depressing than commie blocks, maybe slightly less depressing, but not by much. So yeah, you can find it yourself if you just look up the Wikipedia article. I don't want to link to it in this video because linking to that link could trigger the same red flag as if I used the actual word of the squad that Harley Quinn is a part of. So yeah, just look it up. It's not hard to find. But I know I personally feel less depressed and I feel happier and I feel more alive when I'm around traditional architecture than when I'm around other types of buildings. Like, it's a measurable thing for me personally. I definitely feel it, and I think there's probably other people who feel it also.